And we're back.
And
We
I'm
just went
already
away for a
laughing.
minute. We went away for a minute, came back.
Hello.
Hi, everybody. Yes, it's us, the Salty Sisters. I hope everyone's
Hmm.
doing well. You know us. I'm Kat Corchado. We've got Yvonne Marchese. And Yvonne, you want to introduce yourself to those people who may, I don't know why they wouldn't, but maybe don't know who you are?
Well, sure. Hello, hello. I'm Yvonne Marchese. I am an age agitator, and I do that through my podcast, Late Bloomer Living. It's been around for 4 years now, Kat. Oh my gosh, crazy.
Wow.
And I also have the Age Agitators Club for women, where we're making waves as we age, looking at all of the beliefs that we've been carrying around about ourselves for the past 50 something, whatever years, and shaking it off, babe, shaking it off,
Yeah.
moving into the next phase of life. So that's me. How about you, Kat?
Well, I also known as the freaking fabulous Cat Corchado. Most of you, maybe a lot of you, know that I'm a proud military veteran, which prompted me to start the podcast Sisters in Service. And I'm also the founder of Small Space Pilates because I believe wholeheartedly that everyone has the right to feel good in their body. And why not? I mean, what's the alternative? So I help midlife women um, rediscover their fitness fabulosity.
I just want to
Yes.
say yes, yes. And you just asked, what's the alternative? Well, I've been through the alternative. I think a lot of us have.
Yeah.
Seriously, and it does make a big difference to feel good in your body. Oh my gosh.
Mhm.
And it's worth working at. So, Kat's the one to
Yeah.
help you out with that. She is awesome.
Well,
So,
thank you, Yvonne. So,
yeah,
what are we talking about today? Are we just
w-
going to shoot the you know what? Or are we?
shoot. Ooh, there's so many ways to go with that. Um, we are going to talk about doing something big for the first time later in life, in midlife, and anytime beyond. Because doing something big is, it's always scary. I mean, I think I was, doing big things, like big things that I'd never done before, has always been scary. But I think there's different level of fear, or a different kind of fear around it, when I'm older, which is kind of, it's because for me, I'm just going to speak personally. For me, doing something big is like having to overcome all the years of BS that I've been talking about myself and what I can or can't do,
Mhm.
and then having to overcome that. And I feel like, when I was younger and did something I'd never done before, it was kind of more like, oh, let's try this out. Can I do this? And now it's like, okay, it's almost like I'm trying to prove something to myself, Kat, when I do
Mhm.
something big, like the book or something like that. And you just did something big, which is why I wanted to talk about this, because
Mhm.
you just produced a 1 week long
Mhm.
symposium to talk about health and wellness for women in midlife. And you kicked the patootie out of it. And it was great. It was great. You did a great
Mhm.
job. And I know it was something that you thought about doing for a long time.
Mhm.
And then you did it. And you did it in shorter order than what you thought you could do, didn't you?
Yes. Very much so. I think just to hold that thought for a second, I wanted to just piggyback on what you said is that, when we're younger, I feel that, you know, when I was younger, when I'll come across something big, it was like, I'm gonna do this anyway. You know what I mean? I'm just like you have something to prove when you're younger. I think when you're older and you're in midlife, you kind of think, well, why am I doing this? You know what I mean? It's kind of like, who is this for me? Who am I doing this for? What is this
Yeah.
about?
Yeah,
You
I could
know?
see that too. Yeah, there's that. Boy, you can really mess with yourself, can't you? Speaking for myself, I can sure mess with myself in so many ways.
Well, I think we all can. We all do that. I saw a post on Facebook, and it was about what was it? What episode are you proudest of? And I said episode number 1.
Mm, yeah.
My finger hovered over that published. I was like, and finally I said, ah, and pushed the button. What I love is the fact that when you've done something hard or difficult that you consider, because everyone's definition of something being hard is different. Um, when something else comes up, you're like, okay, I published that. Maybe I can do this.
Are you
So,
talking about, let me back up on you here. Are
mhm,
you, that question that you just answered, that it was episode 1, was that
mhm.
episode 1 of Sisters in Service, or was that
Yes.
so you're going back to, like, back in the day
Yes.
when you started
Very
your podcast?
yes.
I am with you
Yes.
100%, and for
Mhm,
me, that same feeling that you had of, like,
mhm.
push the button, that for me happened before episode 1, because I'd
Mhm,
had the idea for my podcast was niggling at me, saying, "Do a podcast, do a podcast. Oh, you should do a podcast," for 2 years. And I didn't do it for 2 years because, you know, kids and my photography business and trying to grow that. And I was like, stay on
mhm,
target, stay on target. I had some good reasons for not doing it.
mhm,
But when I realized that what was really holding me back was my
mhm,
own fear of not being enough, that's when I knew I had to do it. And that's when I posted to Facebook in December of 2019. I wrote a missive, and I was like, I have had this idea for 2 years. This is my line in the sand. I'm doing this thing.
mhm,
And that was the pushing of the button for me, that was like, because
mhm.
I figured if I have this habit of outing myself on social media. Kind of started with that because I realized how powerful it is. So now I use
Mhm,
it as a tool for accountability for myself. Because once I did it, my heart was pounding in my chest, Kat. Like
mhm.
literally, like if I was a cartoon character, it would have been like you could have seen it, and
Yeah.
it was like that. The adrenaline was pumping through my system for
Mhm.
a couple of hours, and who cares? But I did get, like, all these responses back from Facebook friends that were like, "Congratulations." And I'm like, "Oh, congratulations? I didn't even do nothing yet." And that did push me forward to get me going. But
Yeah, nothing like outing yourself on social media to give yourself that little extra push, right?
what
You
the heck
know?
was I thinking?
I
What was
don't
I
know.
thinking?
But I think that when you do that hard thing, that it sets you up to do other hard things because you're exercising that muscle. Isn't that what Kim always says? You exercise
100%.
that muscle, and then you're like, wow, I did this. Then maybe I can do this. And I did
It
that.
gives you
Now maybe I can
confidence.
do that.
Yeah,
Yes,
I
it
remember the
definitely
first time
does.
I heard somebody say that confidence, you look at somebody who seems confident and you think, "Oh, they're just
Mhm,
confident. That's just them." But
mhm,
she was like, "No, confidence is earned." And I was like,
mhm,
"Oh, that is so true. Anything I've ever done in my life that I feel confident about, it's because I did it the first time, and then I did it a second and a third and a fourth and a fifth, and it got
mhm,
easier, and it was like lifting weights and suddenly going, I feel like I kind of know what I'm doing now, so now I feel
mhm.
confident." You
Yeah.
know?
I mean, it's still different though. I mean, even, I'd had this, I didn't know what to call it. I said it was a webinar at first because I didn't know what else to call it. And it was on my idea or my sticky note board for almost 2 years. It was just up there. And
Was it in
It
your
was
bucket list section, or was it in a where did you I know, like, so why don't we do
it
these
was
sticky notes,
it was
guys, and
in
so there's, like,
yeah.
do it now, do it in a month, do it in a quarter, do it in a
It was in
year.
this year. It was in this year.
Oh, for 2 years it was in this
Yeah.
year? Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, "Yep, not happening this year. Yep, not happening that year." You know? And finally, my idea was, I was finally getting, how it starts to germinate in your brain. You're like, "Okay, I think I'm ready to do this."
Why
And
did you
my
wanna do it, Kat? Can I just ask you that?
Mhm.
Sorry, I totally interrupted you.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to my why, which is, number 1, I believe everyone has the right to feel good in their body. But number 2, I'm a lifelong learner. And I didn't wanna just record something and have people go watch it. I wanted it to be live so that I could ask questions too, and other people could ask questions live. So I wanted to learn about sleep. I want to learn about my microbiome. I want to learn about all of that stuff. And so this idea, you know, I wrote it down because Kim made me, and she said, you know, find out, write it out and what it looks like. So originally it was 10 days. Okay. And whatever happened, the 10 days didn't happen. I was going to go 8 days. 8 days didn't happen. You know what? 7 days was perfect. It was perfect. But I already had this idea of what I wanted to do. The hardest part, I think, was getting all of the guest speakers, getting them into certain dates and times and going from there. But I mean, I was like, I won't say I was frantic. I wasn't frantic. It seemed like all the dominoes fell the way they were supposed to fall. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like one didn't fall out this way and another would fall out this way. I planned it, and then I put it together what I wanted to look like, and then getting the speakers, getting them and it just did that.
And there you go. There
And
you
there
go.
however, it was the aftermath. You don't know how much you put into something. And if you've ever done anything and you felt super exhausted later or afterwards, that's how I felt. That's how
Yeah.
I felt, was exhausted, but in a good way. How
Yes.
you look back at something, you're like, "Oh, wow, did I do that?" Like Urkel. And so I'm still kind of surprised that I did it, that I got it together, and I was like, "Wow." And then of course Kim was like, "Yeah, so this is the first annual symposium." I was like, "Oh, well, here we go."
She tried to pull that on me with the summit too. For anybody who doesn't know, we're talking about Kim White, who is our business coach, our fearless leader in the My Sexy Business community. And Kat and I are in a business mastermind together, which is how
Mhm.
we started hanging out together. And that's
Yes.
where this kind of grew from that, because we
Mhm.
like each other.
We do, we really do. You really like me, you really, really
Really like
like me.
it.
But,
Yep.
Yvonne, there are probably people who are talking about, how some people get ready to get ready? They're always getting ready to do something, but they never seem to jump over the line. What kind of advice could we give someone to help push them a little further forward in their journey? Because I'm sure we've all had that, wow, this would be cool. And then we start the self-talk, right? Well, that could be stupid, and you don't have the time, and I mean, our brains just, and what happens when we do that is that our brain goes, oh, you can't do that. Yeah, I guess you're right. So like, what's that quote? If you think you can, you're right. And if you think you can't, you're right.
Yeah. Well, that's okay. So that's number one, is deciding that you can, or you'll
Hmm.
figure it out.
Hmm.
Maybe you don't know now all the steps, but you will. And I'm just going to say I'm raising my hand because sometimes I am that person that has a hard time. Clearly, it took me 2 years to start the podcast, right? There are times that I am just not ready to do something,
Timing
and
is huge. Yeah.
timing is huge. Exactly. Like I want to do more speaking engagements eventually, but now is not the time for me to do that. And I know that because I have a kid who's still home with me in high school, and I want to be here for his last year of high school and be present for it and not freaking out about trying to build some new endeavor. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm kind of like put the brakes on something. So sometimes it's like you just have to be kind to yourself if the timing isn't right. But then if you get to the point like I did with the podcast where I was like, oh, really, really what's stopping me is me here. It's not lack of money, because this is something that can be done on a shoestring, really. Once I started doing the research, podcasts aren't super expensive to produce. It just, you have to be willing to put in the work. And I had to
Yeah.
learn how to do it, right? So it was like deciding, you know what? I'm just going to dive in and let's see what happens. One thing that worked for me, Kate, if you're looking for tips for people, Kat, is that I decided that I wasn't going to worry about whether or not the podcast was a big success. I'm going to put that in quotes.
Oh, wait. It is a big success. Just saying.
Well, thank you. It's a personal success for me, no matter what. And that's what freed me up to move forward with it as well, is deciding that the success of it was going to come from who I was going to have to be, who I was going to have to become in order to make it happen. And that was like, that gave me like this sense of adventure stepping into the process. Like, ooh, who am I going to be at the end of, once I do it? Like, am I still going to be the same Yvonne I was? Am I going to be new Yvonne, which is kind of scary,
But I
Just
think,
saying.
Yvonne, that, when we were talking about, I want to go back to something you said, is that when, about timing. And so you and I think, agree on this, is that when we both started our podcast and video podcasting was coming out, we're like, nope, we're not going to be on camera. We're not doing lives. We're not doing any of that. And now look at what we're doing.
Right? Oh my
So
gosh, Kat.
sometimes the opportunity is there and you just have to say, why not?
I am telling all of anybody watching right now, I am telling you, I was so uncomfortable with the idea of going on camera. It was a hard no. There's a reason I did a podcast that is audio only. Heck no, not going to be on camera. And it's funny because, suddenly you have to start building an audience for the podcast. And so I had to start stretching out of my comfort zone regarding being on camera. So that started with like social media and doing reels. And I remember being in Clubhouse during the pandemic, and Amanda Sharp would talk about doing TikTok reels. And I was like,
Yes.
heck no.
Nope. Not doing
Nope.
it.
Hard no. And she kept talking about the benefits of it. And I don't know what happened, Kat. One Friday afternoon, I got like a wild hair and decided to do a lip syncing song thing. I put a filter over myself so I could hide. Quite honestly, I had pink hair, I had a nose ring. I was like, okay, this is just fun. And I did something by The Cure or something like that, like music from my youth. And, I did it. And it was like so much fun to do. I was like, oh my gosh, that was really kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it got more views than any other post I'd ever done.
That's very cool.
It was crazy. I was like,
Yeah.
"Whoa, what just happened?"
Mhm.
Now the funny thing is it had nothing to do with my messaging about aging and aging playfully and all the things.
I think it does though. It shows that you're fun.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Looking
yeah.
back, I'm like, "Yeah, it's fun." So but it was really just more like to see if I could do it and to do
Mhm.
something fun, and that it was light. It was an experiment. It was like, "Ah, whatever."
I
And
think
then
some
I
of the
kinda
best
got
ideas
addicted.
though, some of the best ideas are just spur of the moment. "Oh,
Yeah.
let me do this and look what happened." You
Yes.
know?
I recommend for anybody Mel Robbins' book, The 5-Second Rule. I'll say right now that that book changed my life. I was that was what led me down this whole path, Kat. I was in my 40s, late 40s, and I was feeling like a failure. I was feeling
Mhm.
stuck. It was like, and I
Oh, that's an
realized,
awful feeling.
oh, it was awful. It was awful. Most of my 40s were pretty much like that. And I realized something needed to give, and I knew I was talking myself down quite a bit. And
Mhm.
so I started a little self-help journey, and my husband recommended that book, and I started listening to it, and I was like, "Oh,
Mhm.
wow." Because she talked about hitting the snooze button every morning. And she had an aha moment and having a Manhattan at night and watching like a moon launch, and the thing went off in five,
Mhm.
4, 3, 2, 1, and she thought to herself, because everything she described in the book was kind of how I was feeling.
Mhm.
And she thought to herself, I'm gonna get up in the morning and I'm gonna not hit the snooze button. I'm just gonna count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'm gonna get myself out of bed.
Mhm.
And it worked for her, and then she started looking at the science behind it and realized, first of all, counting backwards, very important. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. If you get an idea that you want, that's like an impulse, like something, ooh, I want to do that, count 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 and take action. Because if you can do that within your first 5 seconds,
Mhm.
then you're already moving. You're already
Mhm.
moving towards it. And after that, your brain starts to come in, and all the automatic thinking that you've been carrying around all your life starts to kick, you give it a chance to kick into gear.
Mhm.
So,
I think that's why I was able to put the symposium together because it'd been germinating in my mind how I wanted it to look for so long that it was almost like right there, you know?
so
And I also
visualization is what I'm hearing.
Mhm.
Yeah?
Mhm.
Is that part of it?
Yeah.
Yeah? Because you
Yeah,
can
it
see
was
it?
what I wanted, how I wanted it to look and, I sometimes we're not aware of it. We wanna do something and we're like, "Oh, I don't know how that's gonna look." You gotta give your brain time to kinda go, "Hmm, what do you want? What do you do?" First of all, I knew what I didn't want. And I said, "Okay, let me go from there." I had certain bullet points that I wanted, and I started to put them together. I just had to decide how long and, kinda go from there. But I think also sometimes in our midlife, Yvonne, is that we start to wonder if, like, who's gonna listen to my podcast? You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
Like,
Oh,
who's gonna
yeah.
do Okay, here's the thing, once you get into midlife, you get this kind of wonderful feeling of, "I don't care." I mean, I care, don't get me wrong,
Right.
but it's like, I'm just gonna do this, and unlike you, Yvonne, I don't put it out there, like, I didn't tell everybody lottie dottie and everybody, there you go,
I
Adam.
love your lottie
Um,
dotties.
and I s only in our mastermind group, and my husband knew, but my mastermind group knew. I did put it out on social media, but I didn't tell my parents, I didn't tell my brother, I didn't tell family, I didn't tell friends. I just said, "I just wanna do it." Because I didn't want knowing how my family is, and like, "Oh, well, are you sure you can do this?" And, because they do that. "Well, how long is that gonna take? Isn't that a lot of work? Aren't you already busy? Blah, 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 da, da, da," and I would have never done it. And so finally, in fact, I had already had it planned before I even told my husband. I go, He's like, oh, can you do this? And I was like, oh, I've got my symposium. He goes, what's that? I go, oh, I forgot to tell you.
That's hilarious, Kat.
He's like, you did that yourself? And I go, yeah. He's like, oh my God. He goes, that's awesome. I was like, thank you.
That's
But you have,
hilarious.
but you have to have this. I'm just going to do it. I mean, what have you got to lose? Seriously. I just had my 67th birthday. What have I got to lose?
Yeah. We get one life.
Yeah.
And it's moving by super fast.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I always say it's never too late, but
Mhm.
it's never too late, but
Mhm.
get on it. 'Cause it's moving
Yeah.
by super fast. Like get after
Mhm.
what you want. It's
Well,
that
I
whole
think
get busy living or get busy dying thing.
yeah. Oh God. Well, I think, what helps is having a word of the year. My word this year was momentum.
It's a good word.
And I kept having to, I was, it's easy to sit there and go, well, no. And then something in my brain would be like, what's your word of the year? And I go, momentum. Okay, let's do this. So within a 2-year time span, well, no, I started my podcast, which is almost 3.5 years old. I launched my business almost 2 years ago, and then I did this symposium. So it's been like, boom, it feels like it's been like this, like that. Okay. But again, just do it. I keep having to say sorry, Nike, but I don't know what other words to use. Just get it done. If you want to do it, just get it done. Keep it moving forward.
Start.
Yes.
Starting is the hardest part. Once you do, then the momentum kicks in and you kind of get swept away and swept into the thing, part of it could be, and it could be little things that are getting started, which could be just doing the research.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
You just don't want to get stuck in the research. That's my only caveat with that. But for me, I did a lot of research. I've been a podcast listener for a long time, but then I started listening to podcasts with a more intentional ear. I started listening to the way hosts would introduce their podcast. I started paying attention to intros, outros, the types of questions they were asking people. And I started looking at it from how can I do it the way I want it to be done? I like what they do here. I don't like what they do here. And you start to get a sense of what your journey is and what your path is. So research counts as doing, as long as you don't stay back in the research and go into analysis by paralysis. What is it? The other thing, my favorite thing Kim says is you can't drive a parked car. You can't steer a parked car. Right. So you have to then take some baby steps to get going. And it's like putting a car, I don't know if anybody drives a manual stick shift, but once you get that car moving by using that first gear, you don't have to be going very fast in order to switch it into second gear. It's just getting the momentum going. And so baby steps will get you so much further than you could possibly estimate. Are you with me on that, Kat?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to have I always think of pictures, of what it looks like, like writing it down, doing the baby steps. I looked at, how many podcasts were out there about women veterans, and I think there were 2. And, I didn't know anything. And a lot of people say, well, I'm afraid of doing it wrong. Do it wrong. You know what I did? I did it totally wrong. I launched with 1 episode. 1. Yeah, I did it wrong. I'm still here to talk about it.
So talk about why that's wrong, Kat. Can you, because not everybody's a podcaster or will even know why that's wrong.
Well, in the podcast world, you want to launch with, I think it's 6 episodes or 3 episodes, more than 1. I'm just going to say, so that you build up momentum for the audience that wants to listen. They can, listen to one, listen to another, and then.
Are you talking about like the binge factor?
Yeah, those
Yeah.
people
So if
that
somebody
really
hears
like.
your first episode and goes, "Ooh,
Mhm,
what's next?"
yeah.
I did it wrong too, Kat, by the
Mhm.
way. And we'll
Me
just put
too.
wrong in quotes. I'm just going to say let's put wrong in quotes because it is what it is and it was right for me. I actually had 6 ready, which
Mhm,
was awesome because I knew that I would at least get to my 6th episode.
mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
there's a thing in podcasting world called pod
Pod
fade that is
fade.
super real, people. And because it's a lot of work and a lot of I think the statistic is like a lot of podcasters don't make it past 8 episodes. So
I
I
think it's
knew
less than that. I think it's
y
7,
that's
actually.
crazy, right? But
Yeah.
I knew I had 6 in the can, but
Mhm,
if I was doing it, I guess I did it wrong in that I only put the first episode out, and then they
mhm,
had to wait for week 2 and week
mhm.
3 and week 4. And I don't, w so could I have done it differently? I could have, but, it is what it is, and I'm
Well,
still here.
you learned from your mistakes. So when I say, I did it wrong, podcast royalty says should always launch with this many episodes, but I'm still here to talk about it. And so you want to be able to learn from your mistakes and level up. So that's
Yeah.
what I've been doing, is leveling up my podcast as much as I know how, making sure that it's the way I want it, but not being afraid to make a mistake. If you make a mistake, who's going to know it's a mistake? If I'm listening to your podcast and you're like, "Oh, I left out this." And you're like, I would have never known that. And so I want to tell you something funny. Being in the fitness industry, the first thing that I did was teach classes, right?
Mhm.
And so I was teaching some women how to be instructors. And this is when step aerobics was the big deal. Okay. And they would be doing their little thing. And all of a sudden they stopped and they're like, "Oh, I forgot this." And I went up to her and I said, "Who's going to know you forgot that? No one in the audience or no one in your class knows your routine. So who's to say, Or even if you did mess up, he'll say, "Well, don't you always do this?" I'm like, "Yeah, I decided to change it up, you know? So it's okay. Don't let that fear of messing up, throw you for a loop. Just say, "Wow, okay, I did this. I should have done this. Let me let me level up. What can I do better?" And that's what, whenever you're doing something big, I mean, you could do a podcast on your own, but let's say you want to launch a business. Okay. You can do it on your own. I don't recommend doing it on your own because Lord knows it's hard. You need a team. So when Yvonne says, "Oh, you did the symposium," be like, "I didn't do this by myself, y'all. I had my mastermind people. They were giving me feedback on things. I had my mastermind coach that was helping me, giving me feedback. Don't get me wrong, I did the work, but
Right,
they
and
were
you are a
helping me.
solopreneur, so the business is your
Mhm.
business as a
Yes.
solo endeavor,
Right.
and what you're
Yes.
talking about is surrounding yourself with coaching and
Mhm.
community,
And
right?
community, yes.
Yeah,
And so when
yeah,
people always ask me, they're like, "Oh, do you have a team?" I go, "Yeah, my team is me, myself, and I." But it helps to have these people in your corner, to say,
100%.
"Hey, I have an
Yeah.
idea about this." And they might say, "Well, have you thought maybe this way?" And you're like, "Oh, I didn't think about that." I still do that to this day. Kim will say something in a certain way, or Yvonne will say something in a certain way, and I'll go, "Oh, okay, I'll do it. That sounds great." So it's good to get that feedback because we get in our own heads and we think, "I've got this." And then you say it to somebody and they kind of go, "Really?"
And you're like, "Yeah,
Well, it sounded good at the time.
it seemed like a good idea." Oh my goodness.
But
Oh my
I
goodness.
just want to encourage people to, I knew nothing about a podcast. I actually took a course, you know, online about doing a podcast. I went step by step through it because, being in the military, my veterans and active duty military appreciate this. I'm an ABC 1, 2, 3 girl, and I'm a systems girl. Show me a system. I learned the system, I can do the thing. And so once I got the system down, I said, oh, okay. And then even in business, I won't say there's a system because everyone's business is different and how you approach it. Um, but being an entrepreneur is hard, y'all. It's not for the faint of heart. That's why it's nice to have people who are solopreneurs and they can say, oh girl, been there, done that.
Indeed, indeed.
Here's what I did to get through it, so you help each other. Don't be
Yeah,
out there by yourself. That's like swimming with sharks, and you don't want to swim with sharks by yourself. You want a
it's
lifeboat, you
sad.
need a life vest, you need a rescue team hovering above.
Exactly. And I want to say too that doing something big, your definition
Mhm,
of big might be different than our definition of big, or
mhm.
mine is different from yours, Kat.
Yes.
Whatever feels big to you feels big, and don't minimize
Mhm,
that. Like
mhm,
that, your big may be something different. It might be, you know, getting yourself back in shape after years. It could
mhm.
be, it could be anything that makes your stomach kind of percolate a little bit when you think about
Mhm.
it, but in that good way. Like you want it, but it
Right,
scares you. So
right.
that's the definition of something big in my mind, is it, and it
Mhm.
can be anything. It doesn't have to be starting a business or starting a podcast or hosting a
Right.
symposium or any of those things. For me, way back when, it was not hitting my snooze button. That was
Mhm,
big. And it was getting up an hour earlier in the day before my family
mhm,
so I could commit to 30 days of meditating and moving my body. That
mhm.
was all I planned on. And that felt monumental because I was a
Yeah.
late night girl. I was up late
Mhm,
after my kids would go to bed. That's when I would edit
mhm.
photos from photo sessions. And my husband, who used to be like, "You suck at going to bed early." It's like, I
Thanks,
know.
honey. Thank
Yeah.
you.
So I was burning, I was a night owl, and then that was affecting my mornings, and I didn't want to
Mhm,
get up in the mornings. And then when I did get up after hitting the snooze button, I don't know how many times, I was already running late and having to put out fires and freaking
mhm.
out because I hadn't given myself a solid base to
Time.
start from in the
Yeah.
morning. So that was my big thing, and
Mhm,
doing it led to everything else in my life.
mhm. Well, I
Amazing.
think you also have to not be intimidated, and so I'll tell you this story. When I first came into Mastermind, I first met Yvonne and first met Donna. Donna had already been in business for years. All I had was my podcast, and Yvonne was like, "I'm finishing up my summit," and I was like, "Who is this person doing a summit by herself?" I was like, "Oh, I could never do that." Okay. So whenever you have something big, you're relying on a lot of the things you have learned along the way. All the things I learned about Canva, all the things I learned about, what I needed to do to write a letter, to invite someone or an email to be, on my symposium, which being a podcast host helped because I'm used to reaching out to people. So that helped a lot.
Yeah.
So all of that felt kind of normal for me, you know? And so when you talk about big things, Yvonne, and I agree with you that it depends. What's your definition of big? Your big might be going back to school.
Yeah,
That's
don't judge
huge.
it. Don't
Don't judge
judge
it.
don't
Yeah.
judge your big.
Yeah.
If it's big, trust it, that it, like, if
Mhm,
it feels big, then that's the next right step for you to get out of whatever
mhm,
comfort zone you're in and break through whatever stuckness that you may be feeling,
mhm.
So,
You know how I know something's big for me is like I'll say, "Oh, what if I did this?" And then my stomach hurts a little bit. My stomach does a little flip and then I'm like, "I can't do that." And I'm like, "Wait, why can't I do that?" And I'll write it down. So if you have an idea for something, write it down in a book and leave it there. Let it do its thing. And then you open the book and you go, "Oh yeah, maybe now's a good time that I do this." Don't rely on your memory to remember that idea. I learned that the hard way. I every time I write something down and I go back through it and I go, And sometimes I've gone back and said, yeah, no, now's not the right time for that. But other
Cross it
times I've
off the
come through,
list.
yeah, cross it off the list, or yeah, I don't really want to do that now. And one of them was I was going to do a whole new other podcast, and someone had suggested, why don't you just fit it in with the Sisters in Service, which is Why Not Wellness. She goes, don't do a whole nother thing. Just have it under the banner of Sisters in Service, but call it Why Not Wellness, because we all need wellness. And I was like, oh, and there you have it. Okay. So we're not the be all and end all and all of this stuff. We're just telling you our path of what we went through. That symposium was huge for me. The podcast was huge for me. Starting my own business was huge for me. Those all scared the you know what out of me. But again, why not?
Why not? That is
Why
the most
not?
powerful question. It was one of my last jobs that I ever had. My boss used to say that. He was like, just why not?
Yeah.
Throw it against the wall, see if
Mhm.
it sticks. Now we don't,
Mhm.
Kim always likes to say, forget the sketty throwing, throwing spaghetti against the wall. But frankly, sometimes maybe you need to throw some spaghetti in the wall and see if it can stick. Why not?
Mhm.
And then you can learn from it. And like,
Mhm.
we just need to be less afraid of failing and
Yeah.
lean into that
Mhm.
failure as a way to fail forward, as you like to say, right,
Mhm.
Kat?
Yeah, I
And
love that word, that
yeah.
phrase.
So
But
I
I
think
I
we're at the end of our time, Kat. Look at how we can just
we
talk.
are. I
You
just
know?
wanted to say one thing.
Yes.
When you start to do something, whether it's a business or whatever, you don't know who else is watching you, because Kim calls them workers. You are somebody's leader. You are somebody's like, "Wow, she did that?" That's what I thought of Yvonne. I was like, "Wow, she did that?"
And and I'm like, oh my God, who, me?
Little old me.
We take for granted the things that we're doing that
Mhm,
we don't know what kind of impact we're having on anybody. And if you're watching right now, I'm talking to you.
mhm,
You don't know what kind of impact you're having on somebody else who's looking at you and is super
mhm,
impressed by what you're doing because it seems easy to you and it seems obvious.
mhm.
Look at what people
It's
are
not easy.
asking you. No.
Yeah. It's not easy, but it's worth it. You know what I mean? It's what was that was it the Breck commercial? You know, something something, but I'm worth it. Remember that? Was it Breck shampoo
Something like
commercial?
that, yeah. But I'm
I'm
worth it.
worth it. Aren't
With
we all worth
hair
it?
toss, I'm worth it.
Yeah. We have all at this time in our life, we have all been through so I mean, if you look back, everyone has those times in their lives where they go, "Whoa, I wasn't sure I was gonna get through that." But you're
Mhm.
here to talk about it. So you are resilient. Someone asked me once, they said, well, how do you, not how do you get resilience, but how come you're just not resilient? I said, resiliency isn't something you have. Resiliency is something you build from going through those hard times, walking through the fire to talking about it right now. That's resilient.
You are so right. It's going through
Mhm.
those times when you don't think you're gonna make it through those times.
Yes.
And then you
Yes.
can look back and go, "Wow, I made it. I
And
lived."
that's what we don't do enough.
Yeah.
If we all charted our life from high school to now, you could probably checkpoint certain places where you was just like, "Whoa, that was really hard." But look at
Mhm.
where you are now. And you're scared to push the button on a podcast? Yes, I was. Because I didn't know how to look back. I'd be like, it's a button, push. Now it's like, why not? That's what I keep asking myself. Why not?
Yep. Done is
So,
better than perfect.
yes,
That's the other thing I have learned through this
mhm,
process is that just getting the thing done and
getting it
not
done.
I used to be so tied to it being just right,
Mhm,
to it being perfect. And perfect doesn't actually even exist. Perfect
mhm.
is an idea in your brain. that has
Mhm.
no reality. It has no place in this world. So just done is better than perfect. That's what helps me to get my button pushed on that podcast
Mhm.
every week. It's like, okay, it is what it
Yeah,
is this
it
week.
is
I
what
did
it
my
is.
best.
There you go. Somebody will listen and like it, you know? So, don't be afraid, guys. Go for it. Oh,
Yeah.
someone's already taken that one too.
Yeah. So, uh, oh
Get
my
her
goodness.
done. Oh, that one's gone too. I'm on a roll, folks.
Dang, we got to come up with something original, Cap. Uh,
So funny.
so
Oh
the
my
next time we're going
gosh.
to be with you guys is on July 26th. It's a
Mhm.
Friday, noon Eastern time. We're coming back. We're going to have some more fun. I have something good planned for you.
We will. We always do, I
Yeah.
think. So,
Yeah.
all right, guys. Until next time, be safe. It's the weekend. And as I like to end my podcast, I'm like, please stay safe, take care of each other. Until next time. And this is appropriate. It's never too late to start your impossible. Bye.
Bye.